Okay, what's up, guys? Um, and let's get this show going. Yeah, I wish I had that boxing guy's voice. And so we are taking on some of the points that we mentioned yesterday, and we are going to take them on, and we'll see how far we go with that today. The intention was to kind of wrap up on the resurrection weekend subject. So yesterday we mentioned some of the points of why the case of the Messiah was an illegal case. Okay, we mentioned points around the subject of saying, let me see if I can bring those up on the side of my screen here, so I am reminded. We mentioned subject matters about the need of witnesses and why the witnesses didn't agree. We didn't mention what the witnesses say. We might point that out today. We also highlighted on the bribery part, which is spoken of in Isaiah, in Exodus. And so at that point, we did actually highlight almost 5-6 verses that highlighted towards it. First Samuel chapter number 12, 3 up until 1 up until 5. First Samuel chapter number 8, verse 3. Psalm 26. We mentioned Proverbs 15. And we mentioned Isaiah 1, Isaiah 5, and Isaiah 33. These were verses that are aligned with the subject matter of when a trial is taking place, there cannot be involvement of briberies and stuff like that. And so it was written in their law, so they knew that. That was also in reference to Matthew chapter 12 and Mark chapter number 3 on the subject of their being crooked individuals. Okay, so those were some of the points that we brought up yesterday. Another point we made mention of was the idea of a need of a warrant of arrest. It's not a new subject. It might sound new now when you say, hey, warrant of arrest. It sounds like a new thing, a new concept. But when you read the book of Acts, it's very clear it's not a new concept. Paul needed a warrant of arrest in order to go and arrest the Christians who were causing converts to go into Christianity. And so we spoke about that as well. So I'm just highlighting a small little thingy. We mentioned the particular subject about the missional law that didn't allow court proceedings to continue after sunset, right? We mentioned secret trial. You couldn't do a secret trial without announcing it because people had to attend to make sure that the law was obeyed. So a trial could not be secret. It had to be public, meaning people had to know ahead of time. People didn't know because there wasn't a warrant of arrest. People didn't know that there was even an arrest made thereof. And another point that we made, false witnesses within Mark chapter number 14, 55 up until 60. We spoke about the false witnesses. There's another point today that I want to extend on the need for them agreeing. I didn't give the verses, neither did I give, wait a minute, do I have the Mishnah reference? Yes. So I didn't give the verse yesterday, and I didn't give the tradition, the Judaic tradition that references it. So today I'm going to give you that. We're going to go back, read that, and kind of get in context with what it says, right? And so yesterday I kind of left you in the blank. I was hoping that my phone was going to be working so that people can see the stuff that I'm talking about. You can have access to it. Okay, you can have access to it. There is a Jewish website that has all their libraries, the Mishnah, they have let me just pull them up. It's called Safaria. Okay, I think I've spoken about it. It's called Safaria. It's an app. just for this app, I actually want to even get a tablet so that I can read well with this thing. I remember when I used to read it on my Apple tablet before I lost that and stuff like that. So Safaria gives you an entire library: Tanakh, Mishnah, Talmud, the Midrash, the Halakha. It gives you the Kabbalah, Jewish thought, and the liturgy, and also the wait, what other ones does it give? There's a lot of Jewish traditions, as a matter of fact. The Tosaf, okay? So that one also falls in place. So you have all of the references that they would have used. Now, why do I like this thing? So unfortunately, the thing that's supposed to mirror the app that's supposed to mirror my thingy, it's giving issues. Ooh, Jesus. So these are the unfortunately my thing adjusts with the sun, but that's because it's in the light, right? Ooh, Jesus. Can I get it to not dim, to not light up too much? So those are the thingy. When you go into search here on Safaria, it will allow you to open up the Mishnah alongside it. It would allow you to open the thought line of the Talmud and all that kind of stuff. So Safaria is the place where you can actually get access to these things, né? So that you don't think, oh, Ricky is now reading. This is the things that Jesus was fighting in a lot of the texts. When you hear him say, you have heard it said, or stuff like that, he's referring, Messiah is referring to Jewish traditions, which is all these other traditions. And the problem with these traditions is that they were trying to further them on the basis of the thought line of what a rabbi said and it became profound shouldn't be lost. So they started to gather them up. One of the school of thoughts, I think it's under Halakha, they started to kind of line them up to kind of get all the profound leaders or rabbis' teachings in place so that it made it easier for them to kind of run through. So that's how that came about. But this is important because it tells you what thought line they should have had when they were going into this. Okay, so I forgot to give you that yesterday, but also it was more important today than yesterday. Yesterday I wanted to introduce the subject because there are people that might not even know the when you say the illegalities of the trial of the Messiah, they're thinking how Jesus died, he rose again. They don't think of the wrongs that were being done so that you can. Why is it important, right? Note here. It's important because it tells you that they did what they were doing knowing. The important part of this entire thing is that they did this knowing. They knew what they were doing. They were not like, oh, they were so deceived. No, they knew exactly. That's why when the other, what is it? Was it the rabbi or the high priest when he said, it's better that one man should die than for the whole nation to perish? He knew he's talking about replacement thingy of the sacrifice. So anyways, so those are the points that we mentioned yesterday. Let me see that. Any other point that I missed that I left out? Yeah, so the court was not supposed to proceed after sunset. We mentioned that yesterday because it highlighted a conspiracy. We highlighted also the and also the charges, okay? Yeah, the idea of the changes of the charges, okay? Which was a very crucial point as well. You can't say that, oh yeah, he blasphemed, and then when you arrive at Pilate's house, it's now treason. These are two different charges. Did they not know this? They knew this. I mean, like, come on. When you did a trial within the Jewish community, there was what? 70? Was it 70 elders or whatever? From particularly one that was done under the Jewish law, right? Not the civil law and stuff like that. The one that was done within temple ideologies and stuff like that. There was about 70 elders and stuff. And so, which was why when they went on a unanimous judgment, it was suspicious because these schools of thoughts never agreed. Whether Pharisees and Sadducees or whatnots, they didn't agree on everything. So when they agreed on everything, it was highly suspicious. So we mentioned that point of them changing the charges. So they claimed it was one thing and then they turned it to another thing, which was a very big thing. I mean, like it's written right there. So we're going to further that one. And I do see press leadership says, let me enlarge my screen here. Yesterday, I enjoyed the session, brother. Leadershiping. Danko. We are grateful. I couldn't wait to find out today's session. Awesome stuff. We are getting right into that. Glad you, it was worth the time. Leadership, brother Kumbe. Are you not logging in leadership? You guys would remember brother Kumbe brought this subject up, I think twice last year, that we should discuss this. And I was like, no problem. I'm sure around Easter, we will definitely do it then. So for a period, I had completely forgotten that we had said. And yesterday I was like, oh yeah, we said we're going to do the Easter thingy. So I scrambled some thingy and so we came and we did that one. So this was actually supposed, we had talked about doing it. I thought it would be interesting if we did it alongside the same time. So leadership, I think I sent you the link that allows you to join in. All right. And so let's go straight into today's pointers, right? So I didn't leave anything out. Yes, also, another point, if you missed it yesterday, the Sanhedrin, brotherly hoods over there, it's kind of very weird. Leadership.
Yes, sir. How are you doing?
Number one. I'm glad we could get you today.
It's been a moment.
Yeah, it's been a minute. We haven't done this one.
Great stuff.
And so yesterday we mentioned another point alongside Luke chapter 22, verse 52, when they're going to arrest Jesus. So you'll remember that we mentioned that how leadership, we're having feedback. No, I think you can mute. Don't worry. You can just mute and then unmute. Okay, awesome stuff. So we mentioned the subject about the when they're going to arrest him. This is very weird. Where have you seen a person being arrested? The people that are going to judge him are present. The witnesses are present. The sellouts are present. The police, the investigators. When other people actually document it with the idea that Judas was given. Notice the Bible literally uses the word Judas was given a cohort. This is an army of about 400 to 600 people. Okay. This was very much organized. I mean, like you didn't just wake up and have 600 people present. You'll have to explain that one. And so there is and also there is the guys from the temple and stuff like. So where has it ever been needful to have all these people that are going to be part of the house of the Sanhedrin present at the arrest? That's weird already. Okay. And so those were some of the points. So in case you missed it yesterday, those were some of the points that we mentioned. And also, lastly, for me, the one thing that I was like, you know what? Once I started learning about this information, the illegalities of the case of Jesus, was the first thing that I thought of was Paul had a letter of arrest. Why did they not have a letter of arrest? So that was quite an interesting one. So today, leadership, any thoughts on those particular points before we jump right into
yeah, I mean, when you look at the arresting forces, like you just explained there, what you forgot also was that the high priest, he couldn't come out because he was preparing for the next day where he was going to make the sacrifice. So yet he couldn't be in contact with people, otherwise he would have become ceremonially unclean. So he sent his servant, right, on top of the 600 Roman soldiers, and also the temple police, and also some of the chief priests. And that servant that was sent, who was a servant of the high priest, that is the one whose ear got damaged by Peter, because Peter was ready to die for the Messiah. And the amazing thing is that when they showed up where Jesus was, remember, this guy already had received a bribe, which is one of the laws that they broke. You could not use bribery to initiate any trial at all or any arrest at all. So they'd broken that by the bribe. But amazingly, when they approached Jesus, this band of Roman soldiers, they asked, actually, Jesus initiated. He said, "Who are you looking for?" They said, "We're looking for Jesus of Nazareth." And the term that he used there is the same term that was used to Moses when he asked God, "Who shall I say sent me?" Then Jesus said, "I am that I am." And when he said that, the Bible says they all fell down. They all fell down immediately he said that. And so began the whole procession of breaking of the rules. You are coming to get this guy at night. You want to initiate the trial at night. You're broken one of the rules. They've used bribery. They've already broken a rule by arresting him at night. And again, it says no steps of criminal proceedings were to occur after sunset. And that's the second one. The third one is judges or members of the Sanhedrin were not allowed to participate in an arrest. We've got chief priests who are there.
So that's a giveaway. There's a lot going on there. That is actually, it leads me into some of the points here. So let's jump straight into these verses that I want us to kind of think. So as I stated, guys, we're gonna make references, okay, so that you can know, right? We're not just pulling this out of our head or something like that. Right. First, we mentioned the subject of them needing witnesses yesterday, but we didn't mention the verse. I didn't mention the verse which speaks about that. It's Deuteronomy chapter number 19, okay? Deuteronomy chapter number 19, round about verse number 15. Let me share. Let me share the screen. Okay. Dumisa says, I hate it when you think Jesus is white, not a Jew. Leadership, as we don't talk about those things. We are set on a mark of a high calling. The subject matter of what color was Jesus, leadership, that one, she's too high. It's too high for me. It's too high of wisdom for me. All right. So this is Deuteronomy, verse number 15. Leadership, I don't know if you are able to see from that side.
One witness shall not rise up against a man for any iniquity or for any sin, in any sin that he sinneth, at the mouth of two witnesses or at the mouth of three witnesses shall the matter be established.
Okay, so that's kind of a very key verse right there. But you will remember that when Jesus was being accused of doing one or the other thing, there was, if a person presented an accusation, it was one person. the guy that came and said that what verse is that? Let's see. I think it's, let me open it up. Ooh, I closed it. I closed it. The verse that talks about okay, let me just open it here. Destroy. Let me try and open it here so I can see where it is. Where he says, build this temple and and in 6 days I will destroy it. Okay, yeah, it's Matthew chapter number 26. Okay. Matthew 26. Look at how many people presented the accusation. Matthew 26. Yeah, we are going straight into the verses. We're not gonna just say it and pass. We'll highlight it, and then we'll highlight as the Sanhedrin text that goes alongside it. All right. You. Is it reflecting?
Yeah, can see it.
61.
61.
Yeah.
It's 61, right?
That's
61, my bad. Okay. And but none came. So they tried to get witnesses against him, but none came. Through many witnesses came, yet found they none. And at last came two false witnesses. So they had two false witnesses, but look at the things that they say. And said, this fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and build it in 3 days. Now, if you go to the original statement where Jesus said that, that's not even what he said. And so they're presenting, and remember, they had to be accurate at how you were quoting the person if you're going to persecute a person on a subject.
Yeah.
He said, destroy this temple. They are alluding to the temple of the building. Leadership, you were saying?
Yeah, just to add on what you're saying. So the two witnesses' statements had to agree word for word for them to be taken in. And remember, before they found these two, they were bringing witnesses who were contradicting each other over and over and over. Just to show how disorganized they were and how they were trying to rush this thing. Because remember, this was the same time as the Passover about to happen. So when they found these two guys, the first one says, we heard him say, I will destroy this temple that is made with hands, and in 3 days I will build another one made without hands. This is where they quote Mark 14, verse 58, right? Then Matthew speaks of the one you've just shown, which says, this man said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to build it in 3 days. So the two witnesses, they are saying something that sounds similar, but it was not similar, because the first statement there is a statement of intent. And the second statement is a statement of ability. So one is saying, I am able. It's an ability statement. I am able to destroy and build this temple in 3 days. The first one was saying, I will destroy this temple made with hands. It's an intentional, it's showing intent that I will destroy. So those statements were not the same. And that's why that got kicked out. Those witnesses got kicked out and they were regarded as false witnesses.
Awesome stuff. Now, as a reference point, so you can hear intent and things. So they tested it. It didn't stand. Throw it off.
Yes.
And the funny part is they expected him to still make a defense.
Yeah.
knowing very well that the thing that they were
very
saying was thingy.
saying was
Okay, so they say that, and then
okay.
immediately the high priest said, arose and
Said,
said,
arose and said,
answers thou nothing?
thou nothing.
What's he supposed to answer? The thing that they are claiming
That
is
they are
it,
claiming is
it's false.
false.
It's false. But
False.
on top
Exactly.
of that, let's go to,
That
yeah, let's
go
go
to
to the
the
Mishnah now. The Mishnah,
Mishnah now.
remember, Mishnah are
Remember
the rules that they
uh,
would be
the
sticking
rules that
by
they would by
to say
to say
whether something is right by Jewish law or against. Leadership, if you can read this one for us as I put it up there.
I put it up there.
This is from
This is
5.2.
from
So this is
5.2. So
Mishnah
this is
Sanhedrin
Mishnah
5.2.
5.2.
Okay. An incident occurred and Ben Zakkai examined the witness by questioning them about the color and shape of the stems of figs in order to unearth a contradiction between the witnesses. The Mishnah explains what is the difference between interrogations and examinations. With regards to interrogations, if one of the witnesses says, I do not know the answer, their testimony is void immediately. With regard to examinations, if one says, I do not know the answer, and even if two say, we do not know the answer, their testimony still stands. Both with regards to interrogations and examinations, at a time when the witness contradict one another, their testimony is void.
There you go. So
There you go.
this
So
this goes
this
also alongside the line of what Brother Kumbero was just stating right now to say,
right now to say
if you are highlighting intent and you're highlighting thing, the two are different. Here they are showing an example of an explanation of a thing or an interrogation of a thing. And so which one is it? But either ways, when it comes to it, if they are contrary, they are all void. And so those particular points right there are quite critical within their own
their
law
own
thingy.
law opinion.
Yeah.
Leadership, do you want to extend that one or should I move on to the next point?
To the next point.
Let's move on to the next one.
The next point
The next
is
point is,
Matthew chapter number
Matthew chapter
26,
number
verse
26,
65.
verse 65.
And leadership, if you can read for us 64 and 65 right there.
That's right there.
Jesus saith unto him, Thou hast said, nevertheless, I say unto you, hereafter shall ye see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven. Then the high priest rent his clothes, saying, He hath spoken blasphemy. What further need have we of witnesses? Behold, now you have heard his blasphemy.
Okay, that's so offensive on so many levels.
Yeah.
So, first of all, the first rule was you needed witnesses. Now, the high priest says, oh no, we don't need witnesses. we don't need witnesses anymore. And to make it even worse, I was looking for the Mishnah around this. I forgot to actually locate it. You could not persecute a person on the basis of their own statement alone.
That's
Okay?
right. And yeah, that's right. So the issue was you could not allow somebody to testify in their own trial by so during the trial, the defense had the first word. The defense had to have the first word. Because remember, if you come to somebody who you have charged with capital punishment, if you allow them to speak, if they were suicidal, they can say, yes, I committed this, so that they can be killed because they were being suicidal. Secondly, if you allow them to speak also first, they could then also try to protect somebody. If I knew Ricky was the one who committed the crime, and I was the one arrested, I could say, no, it was me. So charge me with the crime. So they avoided asking that question. So what the high priest did here was also breaking the law. You were not allowed to then ask the accused in that manner. And by breaking that law, there was also another law they broke, because he was then taken to the house of the high priest.
Oh, it does not
And
really.
you could not try somebody in secret. He had to be taken to the temple.
Yeah.
There was an actual area in the temple where the person
courthouse.
had to, exactly. So two laws were broken there. You took him to the house of the high priest, and you were trying him not in the temple. And thirdly, the high priest, another law that he broke was to rent his garment. He's not allowed to rent his garment unless somebody mentions the law, the name of the Lord Yahweh in vain.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so that's saying a mouthful. By the way, let's go back to that verse. So the first thing is to note there is that the high priest immediately dismisses the need for witnesses, which is weird. You are the high priest, you are supposed to be upholding the law. And the first rule that we spoke about is the need for witnesses, according to Deuteronomy chapter number 19. Right. And that part again that Brother Kumbero mentioned up there about blasphemy. Let me see if I can find that. I actually had it in my thingy. Blasphemy. You couldn't just say anything was blasphemy. Okay. It wasn't just like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna pull anything out of my head and say it's blasphemy. Sanhedrin, out of the Mishnah 7:5. So if you go to 7:5, Mishnah 7.5. If you go to 7.5, I am avoiding saying chapter 7, verse 5, because that's not how that's not how they speak of them. So the Mishnah 7.5.
7.5.
Okay, leadership. You can read that one.
Leadership.
It agrees with what
That
you were
one?
just saying now.
You agree with what you were saying now.
Yeah. The blasphemer is punished only if he utters the divine name. Rabbi Joshua B. Kocher said, the whole day of the trial, the witnesses are examined by means of a substitute for the divine name. May your say smite your say. When the trial was finished, the accused was not executed on this evidence, but all persons were removed from the court, and the chief witness was told, state literally what you heard. Thereupon he did so using the divine name. The judges then arose and tore their garments, which were not to be resewn. The second witness stated, I too have heard thus, but not uttering the divine name. And the third says, I too heard thus.
Okay. Note something there. The Mishnah 7.5 also highlights you were not allowed to rent your clothes. And so there is another thing which means this guy was acting. He was putting us through Hollywood. He knew what was the extreme, and he went and he went to the extreme. He thought he was performing Hollywood. So he literally rent his clothes, which the Mishnah directly says you could not do. So wait, is it in the same verse? Is it in the same verse? Wait, the renting of the clothes is in chapter 65. It's in 65.
65. Yeah.
So there it is right there. So this guy literally just went and did exactly the very same thing that it was supposed not to do. So first of all, it's not blasphemy because he didn't utter. Now notice this, how smart Jesus was a lawyer, guys. Jesus was a lawyer. Leadership, please read this verse
Please
again
read
to
this
the way
verse
Jesus
again
said it.
to the way Jesus said it.
Jesus said unto him, Thou hast said, Nevertheless, I say unto you, hereafter shall ye see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven.
Okay. Now,
He
if you
didn't
read
say
the
the name.
law, if you read the law, if you just read what the law says, Jesus didn't say the name. He said, I'll be sitting on the right hand of power. Guys, we have an advocate who really knows his way. So
And
he says in the right hand of power. That's fascinating. Just leadership.
yeah. And you see, remember, there was a history between these two. Remember, the high priest had a business where they sold sacrifices. They were super rich. These were guys who were super rich. And remember, on two occasions, Jesus came and he started throwing tables and all where they were dealing and selling sacrifices and exchanging money. They were they had a money exchanging business and a sacrifice selling business. So you can imagine if all the Jews from all over the world used to come during every Passover and they had to buy sacrifices because you couldn't travel from abroad with a sacrifice. You would rather come and buy it when you arrive there in Jerusalem. So these guys were super, super rich. So when Jesus threw the table and smacked those guys who were exchanging money there and selling sacrifices, the high priest started having an issue with Jesus. So there was a grudge he had against Jesus. So that is why it didn't make sense why he accused him of blasphemy when he didn't even mention the name of God. And he started renting his clothes because he was playing to the gallery. He thought this is Hollywood. Let me play to the gallery and just show them that indeed this man has blasphemed.
He wanted to show himself passionate, and you're only showing how carnal you are. Anyway, so that was another thing that they brought up there. So you can see those two areas there. The subject matter of the charge of blasphemy doesn't stand because according to the Mishnah law 7.5, as a matter of fact, we should go to 8.5 as well. Oh yeah, I almost forgot that one. 8.5. Let's go to 8.5. This is it. Yes. Then wait, just a second. Is it the second point? Yes, the second point right here, right there. One who curses, leadership.
Can you project it?
Is it showing? Leadership. Me, I'm chilling. I'm
One who curses his father or his mother is not punished unless he curses them by the divine name. If he cursed them by a nickname, Rabbi Meir held him liable, but the sages ruled that he is exempt. According to Leviticus 29 and Exodus 21:17, one who curses his parents is liable for the death penalty. Our Mishnah teaches that he is liable only if he curses them using God's explicit name, which we no longer know. Although Rabbi Meir holds that he is obliged even if he uses a nickname for God, the sages disagree.
And so, according to Mishnah law, I found it funny there where they say, we don't even know what it is.
What the name was, because nobody could say the name.
I like that one. I like that part. So if he did state the name and he's blaspheming, he didn't say the name. You couldn't say because humans didn't know what it was.
Yes, exactly. So how did the witnesses come and say the name? Because they coached them. Remember, they had to coach them so that they can, and they broke another rule. Judges could not initiate the charges. Because remember, after they found that the witnesses were contradicting each other, The high priest then asked him a question, which also broke another one where you cannot testify against yourself. Then the one that he broke is that judges, the high priest, you could not bring a charge. They brought a charge of blasphemy. I cannot be a judge and then bring a charge against Ricky, and yet I'm going to be the judge who's judging Ricky. I cannot be doing that. Even in our own laws today, you can't do that as a judge. You understand? The police have to open a case. The prosecutors have to bring the charges to you, to the judge. But in this instance, the high priest himself then charged Jesus with blasphemy. They broke one of the other rules.
They broke the other one as well. I know these guys they were very blunt. And if you check here, when he states it, it's after Jesus says this, he doesn't say the name, and then he says, yeah, this man has committed a blasphemy. We don't need witnesses. Imagine guys, there are 3 violations here in this one verse. One verse, 3 violations. He rented the clothes. He lied about there being blasphemy. He said we don't need witnesses. 3 in one verse.
Yes, in just one verse.
Guys,
and,
let's be
and
honest.
imagine contradicting your own rules where it says for capital punishment you must have 2 witnesses. And yet he says, what do we need witnesses for? I mean, imagine
Let's
the
go
high
to
priest
capital
saying, what do we need
punishment.
the witnesses for? Why do we need this law for, this rule for?
Oh my goodness. The standards were very barbaric here. And so, you know, the funny thing is this. We've been really hanging on the shallow aspects of what happened there. You know, we're talking about, Jesus died, what, and all this. We've not been seeing the other side, We've not been seeing this side of what was happening on the other side. I mean, like for 20 years of my going here and there listening to Christian, I never heard about that. Completely. It's over the last 5, 7, 8 years that I only learned it, and I was like, what? There was something wrong that was done? I thought maybe our sins were just forgiven because of this particular act. But there was a lot more. And another part, leadership, they put you in a mention there. They put you in a mention. There is another point that I want us to leave with here. Just in case my load shedding decides to go. Notice, first of all, in that verse that we mentioned, in point number 7 of the Mishnah law, and point number 7.5, 7.8, and 7.5 clearly state that blasphemy is when the name of the Lord is mentioned. But he disregards that. He disregards need for witnesses. So which means this thing was not going to be handled with justice to begin with. Now, if you go to that Leviticus that he mentions there, that the rabbi mentions there, he realizes that Israel is under, I don't know if you could say parenting of God in the sense. He's putting it under that particular terming, basically. He's using the language of Malachi, basically. Is the father not honored? Therefore, why have you not honored me? He's using that language of the Mishnah law, which was what a priest could do, or how a priest would see it. So it explains why he chooses those, but the rabbi uses those particular languages. So the Levitical law there, mentioning mother and father, highlights back to that Israel being fathered by God. Now, another point there is the defense, the charge part. I was actually going to forget that one. The charge being brought by the high priest. You couldn't do that. How are you going to be a judge over the subject if you are the one who's bringing the charge?
And once he brought the charge, he was bringing the charge based on what Jesus said. Remember, a person could not be condemned solely on the basis of his own words. That is why you needed witnesses. So it couldn't be solely on his own words. And mind you, this is now happening in his own house. It's not happening in the temple.
Yes.
It's happening in his own house. And furthermore, another rule that they broke was the verdict could not take place at night. It could not be announced at night. You could not announce the verdict at night that he is guilty. And they did that at night.
Also, another thing to note there, while on the subject of the verdict, yesterday we mentioned, sorry, load shedding just hit. I hope it didn't mess up my camera.
Okay.
On the subject of the verdict here, one of the other important points to note here for the believers, you were supposed to discuss the subject matter about the evidence during the night. So the evidence was presented during the day. So whoever is being accused comes up, he defends himself on why he is an innocent person, whatnot, character presentation is made, whoever wants to witness for the person witnesses, and you have a and then after the person has made a defense for themselves, then those that have the charge against him would then come and make their presentation. But in this case, as we noticed, they only spoke. The people that spoke were people that were accusing only. So already the case is unfairly done because there wasn't a defense, which is why yesterday I mentioned that I liked the Passion of the Christ, because when the Passion of the Christ plays out, Mel Gibson shows, of course, maybe he didn't take it directly from the Bible. Mel Gibson shows the people being chucked out, people that would have been in agreement with Jesus being kicked out.
Yes.
Showing how it was supposed to be done. Yes.
And very powerful what you're saying, because remember, the Sanhedrin was a 71-member council, and they had 24 members who were Sadducees, who were chief priests, right? Then you have another 24 elders who were Pharisees, and then you had 22 scribes who were also Pharisees. So the majority were Pharisees. And then you had one position extra, which was for the high priest, who was also a Sadducee. So he was the one who would oversee the proceedings. Now, from what you're saying, Ricky, you could not have you could not have, for instance, in the case of capital punishment, the trial and the guilty verdict could not occur at the same time. You had to have a period of 24 hours and wait 24 hours, just in case there was information that could favor the accused. And secondly, for capital punishment, they had to, let's say, for instance, the minimum that was allowed was 23 to give a verdict. It was 23 minimum that was allowed. And in the 23, if 11 said you are guilty and 13 said you are innocent, you were considered innocent. If 12 say you are guilty and 12 say you are innocent and one abstained, you are still found innocent. You had to be above the other, you have to be above by 2, meaning out of 23, for you to find somebody guilty of capital punishment, you had to get 13 votes against 11. So there must be a difference of 2 votes, and which was the reason why they also needed 2 witnesses. to agree.
Oh. Mm.
You understand?
Leadership.
So
Also,
the meaning
on top of that
is,
ad, on top of that ad, that there was
yeah,
the okay. So they did the presentation of evidence the previous day. They
yeah,
deliberate the information during the night, and then the verdict was only allowed to be done in 3 days.
yes. You're allowed
And
3 days to give the verdict. Even if they knew what the verdict was, they had to
yeah.
allow 3 days. But
Mm,
they were trying to rush all this
mm.
to happen and squeeze it in before the Passover.
Yeah. So that's another red flag right there. Without that, the verdict had to be given the very same day, which is why, salute to Pilate. Pilate sees the charges, both sides. He sees the treason part. He questions, because if you remember
Mhm.
the questions that he asks him about, are you a king? He's asking him
Yeah.
about treason charge. Um, why have your people brought you to me? Basically, the whole thing of right of jurisdiction, whatnot, and stuff like that. He recognizes that whole nuance in the debate or in the discussion. But Pilate realized that this was more of a spiritual subject, which is why he was kind of captivated by his his dream. It's
Yeah.
try to stay hands clean. But when he listened to the charges and he looked at the man's the presentation of the people, he saw that there wasn't a balanced view towards him. So he didn't want trouble with the situation, which was why he just went, you know what, I'm going to just decide on it and I'm going to wash my hands.
Yeah. And 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 while jumping to that, the other two rules that were broken was that when you vote for the death penalty, it had to be done individual count. You can't just come and say this man is guilty. You had him. We are all agreeing, right? Because that is plotting, and they were not allowed to that because the voting procedure was that the youngest ones vote first, and then the older ones vote first, just so that you
Mm,
avoid the elders influencing the younger ones. And it had to
mm,
be an individual count. They will say,
mm,
Ricky, what vote you in? Kumero, what vote you in? Mary, what vote you in? And everybody had to vote in. Now,
mm,
when what most people don't realize that the two trials took place
mm,
against Jesus. There was the religious trial, which was the Jewish trial that was
mm,
done by the elders here.
mm,
Then there was the Roman trial. The
mm,
Roman trial didn't care about anything religious. They
mm,
only care about anything political.
mm.
From
Yeah.
a religious side, from a religious side, these guys did not have the power to sentence anybody to death. Hence, that's why even after they said they found him guilty, they took him to Pontius Pilate to
Mm,
try him under Roman law,
mm,
because at that time the Jews, Jerusalem was under Roman Empire,
mm,
right? So
mm.
Pontius Pilate was ruling over is it Judea and Samaria,
Yeah.
and Jesus was a citizen. He was from Galilee,
Mm,
and Galilee was under Herod
mm,
Antipas.
mm.
So
Yeah.
the point of Pontius Pilate washing his hands was because he tried him several times, 5 times. He
Mm,
found him not guilty, and he said,
mm.
"Look." At one point, he even handed him over to
To be
Herod.
scorched.
And remember, Herod and Pontius Pilate were
They
enemies,
don't get together.
and
Mm,
this and they were enemies because of one thing. Herod Pontius was a nominal a Jew.
mm,
He converted to Judaism, but he was not a
mm.
hardcore Jewish.
Judaism. Mm,
So he had to be around Jerusalem to come and observe the Passover.
mm,
So when he became king or ruler of Galilee, he wrote to Pontius to say, remove all these statues and flags and images of Rome.
mm.
Because according to the Jewish law, you can't make statues and paintings and images of
Of people.
anything,
Mm,
of people.
mm,
So Pontius Pilate refused. And um, Herod wrote to the Roman Senate, which ordered Pontius to remove them. So they didn't like each other because of that. But now, when Pontius saw that, listen, what is the charge against this man? They said,
Yes.
no, he said he's the Messiah. When Pontius questioned him, he said, are you a king? He didn't say, are you a Messiah? He said, are you a king? He was not interested on the religious side. He said, are you a king? Because in king, it means this guy will be competing with Caesar.
Caesar.
And anybody who's competing with Caesar or trying to cause friction with Caesar, that's what they regarded as sedition. You could only be sentenced to death for sedition, right? And that's why we have a poor interpretation where those robbers who were hung with Jesus, they claim they are robbers. They're not robbers. They were criminals who committed the crime of sedition. The same thing as Barabbas. Barabbas was not a robber. It was sedition that he committed. Somebody died when he was committing this sedition, where he was trying to cause an uprising. So he was charged to be sentenced to death. So now Pontius then hands over Jesus to Herod. Herod gets excited because he had heard so many things about this guy, Jesus. Herod is the
Yeah.
same guy who beheaded John the Baptist. And when they handed him over to Herod to try him, Herod said, no, man, perform one of your miracles, do a miracle, do something. And then
Jesus
he
said
found
no.
him not guilty. He found him not guilty. He handed him back to Pontius. Pontius then said, listen, I've tried him 4 times. The 5th time he said, look, um, the tradition here is I can release. Actually, even before that, remember
Leadership.
there was Barabbas.
Leadership.
Yes.
Before you pass that point, I'll forget this. I will definitely
Yeah.
forget this. You were not even allowed. You were not allowed to crucify someone or punish someone with death after scourging them. And so Pilate tried to get away by using that. When he sent him, because I used to ask myself, why did Pilate send him off to be scourged? He was trying to get Jesus off by saying he's scourged, let him go, guys.
Yes, exactly. And the scourging of the Romans was different from the one of the Jews. Because with the Jews, what they will scourge you with, they use leather whips, where they will whip you 40 save 1, meaning 39. Because if you were scourged 40 times, that was considered shameful. It brought shame to you. So they will always say, to avoid any issues with counting while they were whipping you, they will always say you are scourged 40 save 1, 39 times. But the Roman scourging, terrible.
Didn't end.
Their whips, at the end of the whips, they had metal balls, they had bones, lamb bones, they had broken glass, they had metals hooks at the end. When they whip you, they did not have a specific number of whips. It was limitless. They will whip you and whip you and whip you. And with that, remember, the Jewish one was just on your back. The Hebrew whip, the Roman whip, it will whip you on your face, it will whip you on the side. And the Bible says, when it speaks of Isaiah, that he was not recognizable anymore after that whipping that they did, because they did it the Roman way. They say his face was pulp. And according to the whipping history, even family members sometimes could not recognize you after you were whipped by Romans.
Yeah.
And that is why, from our biblical history, we don't really
But
get
also
the
there wasn't
picture.
need.
Yeah.
There wasn't need because you
way
were dead by then, anyways.
Exactly. And Jesus was whipped so terribly. And according to the rules, the Jewish rules, you were not allowed to be scourged before your execution.
Because you're
So
gonna
they
die.
broke that rule. Yeah. And so when he brought him back, he thought by scourging
But
him now, those guys are gonna feel sorry and say, no, it's okay, release him.
I said
They
no.
said, no. If you release this guy, you are no
You are
friend
an
of Caesar.
enemy.
You are an enemy of Caesar. And he remembered, hey, I already had issues with Herod when I disagreed with these guys. Then he
To go
thought
to Caesar.
there was one practice that they had every year before the Passover to release one of the criminals. So he
Yeah, shit.
brought another guy called
Before you
Barabbas.
go there, before you go to the Barabbas situation, there is actually a line of history. If you research the relationship that that Pilate had with Caesar, there seems to have been some things that were out of order between things. I just can't remember it right now. I was trying to remember it during the day, whatnot. There was an issue between the two of them where there was an escalation. So he was trying to get to show that he was competent in handling matters. I don't know if you can remember that one or what it was.
Yeah, I think part of it, I do remember bits of it where um, part of it is also what I mentioned earlier that um,
The fracas
he had
between
issues with the
Herod.
Roman Senate. Yeah, because
Oh.
Herod had reported Pontius Pilate to the Roman Senate, and the Roman Senate rebuked him and told him, "No, do what Herod was saying and remove those." That was part of the issues that he had with Herod. So he was trying to prevent any rebellion that could occur, because if he continued, sidelining these guys, they could end up having a rebellion within Jerusalem, and he wanted to avoid that at all costs, because he had already been told before, when he was made ruler of that area, that there were already issues there. So when he was put there, he was supposed to calm down the situation.
Okay. Yeah. You were saying about Barabbas.
Yeah, and before we go to Barabbas, the last rule that they broke, rule number 2, was that no trials were allowed on the eve of the Sabbath or on a feast day. And remember, this was just we were about to get into the whole Passover now. So they
Yeah.
could not have a trial on the eve. That is why these guys were trying to push everything to happen. Like, imagine being
Immediately.
arrested now, and you are tried now, and tomorrow you are crucified, everything. So when Barabbas was brought out, Barabbas was charged with sedition. And Barabbas was not a name but a title, because Barabbas simply means son of the father. And when you look at what your Josephus and some of the rabbinic writings say, they said he had the same name as Jesus, because Jesus apparently was a common name. It's like me saying Si or Paul. It was a very common name. So Bible writers, in order not to confuse people with Jesus was being referred to, they just say Barabbas, which is just son of. So they were not mentioning his first name. And others said it was Jesus, son of the Father, and Jesus, the Son of God. So Jesus, son of the Father, Barabbas, he was charged with sedition, meaning he was going to be sentenced to death. He was already sentenced to death. So when Pontius Pilate came, he thought, by saying, which one of these two should I release? He thought they would say, I release Jesus. They said, no, release Barabbas. Give us Barabbas. So that's when Pontius Pilate, he took a pause when his wife came and said she had a dream. And the dream was, she was telling Pontius Pilate, have nothing to do with this man. This man is innocent. That's when Pontius came back. And when he took that break to go and listen to what his wife was saying, the elders, the chief priests, they started coaching people. We must tell him we want Barabbas to be released. They coached everybody while he had taken that break. So when he came back, he said, who shall I release? They said, release Barabbas.
Yeah, and it
Let the
sounds
blood.
difficult.
Yeah.
Let his blood be upon us and our children. And remember, it sounds difficult. Like, how do they coach people? How do they coach all of Judea or wherever, or Jerusalem, how to say the same thing? It's very much easy, because these guys could mobilize 400 of their soldiers, their whatnot, their cohort. So
Exactly.
it's very easy to spread the information. across. Now, another particular point also that you mentioned there, it's funny that these people were supposed to be the next day doing a Passover sacrifice, and they are defiling themselves by going in and out of this type of trial business and shenanigans and all that kind of jazz. But another thing that I wanted to kind of bring back into memory here, when you bring back the pilot thing, we mentioned the other day that if Jesus is being said to be guilty by by sinful people, to justify the sinful people, God then saw it fit to use a sinful man, an unrepentant man who was convicted by his wife, to declare him innocent. And so there you have the role of Christianity, which the Jews are trying to go against right now, which was evangelism. You see, the evangelism that was already taking place, even in the trial. So even in the midst of clouding of information, people are trying as hard to say, no, but this person is guilty. They come back to you, hi, my leadership, but this person is guilty. He says, no, 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 no. So he stuck to it 4 times. He was even trying to do gymnastics with them and say, okay, guys, let's just get him beaten. Maybe when he comes back, they will feel sympathy. They don't feel nothing. And then he took the judgment seat. He sat on it. He washed his hands and said, you know what? This man is innocent. I wash my hands of it. But if you are recognizing the Passover lamb, you that's what you did at the end of the at the end of the 7 days. You had to declare him innocent or clean or purified before you committed him towards the sacrifice. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you look also at I think it's John 19 verse 15, where Pontius Pilate then says, "Shall I crucify your king?" And the chief priests answered, "We have no king but Caesar." And imagine, these are the chief priests saying this, the Sadducees, who are now saying, "We do not have any king but Caesar," aligning with Rome. Imagine, they disowned their own Messiah and aligned with Rome and proclaimed their allegiance with Caesar. And remember, these are the chief priests who are saying this, the Sadducees. The Pharisees would have never made this statement. Those were hardcore Jews.
Yeah.
So the ones who were saying these statements were, hey, Caesar is our king, were the Sadducees. Because remember, the Sanhedrin was along party lines. You had the chief priests, you had the elders who were Pharisees, and you had the scribes who were Pharisees, right? Those ones would have never, the Pharisees would have never said a statement like that, no. We don't have any other king but Caesar.
So they sent, they had them there, the lawmakers were there. Said, no, we will create other laws. We are not in line with that one. And so that's quite an interesting one. So guys, I hope you guys, any other thing that you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, from that moment when they then decided that, fine, they're releasing Barabbas.
Yeah.
That was the final attempt by Pontius Pilate to release him. And the question gets asked, so who killed Jesus? Was it the Romans or was it the elders, the chief priests? I say both. Pontius Pilate had the power to release Jesus, but he succumbed to the pressure where he was afraid because of previous issues that if he released this man, there could be instability in Rome because of these guys. And the other thing is the Sanhedrin could not go and sentence Jesus to death because the power of sentencing, of capital punishment, was taken away from them when Rome took over Jerusalem. So they could no longer sentence anybody to death. right?
Mm.
Hence
Mm.
why they wanted to take him for a political trial, because a religious trial could not find him guilty. But the
Yeah.
same way, a political trial found him innocent.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
That's
when they
compelling.
handed and when they handed him over now to the Romans to be crucified,
Mm.
they had the most terrible way. I mean, crucifixion was initially designed for slaves, but Rome then took it to even do it upon their own resident citizens to make
Yeah.
sure nobody could think of rebelling against Rome.
Mm.
And the punishment was so bad because, I mean, you die by your lungs not being able to breathe eventually. And it was not immediate death, because some people can take days without dying because they will give you liquids or water to drink, but they will not
Mm.
give you food.
Mm.
And the pictures we get of nails going through the palm are not correct, because
Mm.
you cannot sustain the weight of a full grown man
On
by
the.
your weight.
Mm.
So it had to go through the wrist,
Yeah.
and there was also one that had to go through the heel on the foot,
Mm.
so that you can then balance and remain there. And that is
Mm.
why the other two criminals, they had to break their legs. And when they break their legs, remember, you can no longer support your body. So you can't
Mm.
breathe and you die because you're struggling to breathe.
Mm.
Because
Mm.
remember, with your feet, you can push yourself up to take a breath. But now
Mm.
when they break the legs, you can no longer support yourself to breathe. That's how you die. You die because you can't breathe anymore. But with
Yeah.
Christ, he was already sketched. He was beaten up so bad, some could not even recognize him.
Mm.
And when he was there, he's the only one whom they didn't break his bones, because by the time they were trying to check who's still alive and everything, they stabbed him on the side, and
Mm.
that's where blood and water came out, which also has a scriptural and a prophetic reference.
Mm.
But when you also look at what he says when he's on the cross,
Mm.
and now, I mean, we have covered now all the 22 rules that they broke. Now we're looking at his crucifixion. When is
Mm.
there the specific statements he says? He
Mm.
says to Mary, who, I think it was Mary Magdalene, and the sister to Mary, his mother,
Mm.
and he says, "Mother, your son,"
Yes.
and he says, "Son, your mother," referring to
Mm.
John.
Mm.
And in in Jewish practice, the firstborn is the one
Mm.
who's supposed to take care of the mother if she gets widowed. So
Mm.
if the father passes on, the firstborn son takes in the mother, and that is why John then did after that. He took her into his home to stay with him,
Mm.
because the other half brothers of Jesus were not
Mm.
yet believers in him at that moment.
Leadership. Also, before you finish that point on the
Yeah.
on Jesus handing over his mother to thingy, funny enough, God puts it into the king's heart. When he presents him back, he says, "Here is your king." when
Yes.
Pilate brought he said, "Here is your king."
Mm. And they said, no, no, we don't have a king.
We don't have
Only
a
king is
king.
this.
Yeah, you were saying on
And
those points.
and and now the second part,
Mm.
right? He then speaks of um okay, there are things that occur from noon until 3 p.m. There is darkness, and there is also an earthquake that takes place.
Mm.
When that darkness takes place, this
Mm.
speaks of the 3 hours of darkness, which represent the cup that Yeshua prayed he will not drink.
Yeah.
When you hear
Mm.
of the cup that Yeshua said, "I do not want to drink," but indeed he partook of it,
Mm.
and that was the wrath of God, and
Mm.
that was Yeshua's spiritual death. For three
Mm.
hours, he was separated from God. And when he was separated from God, that's when he even shouted out and said, "Elohi, Elohi, lama sabachthani."
Mm.
Why have you forsaken me? He was forsaken. He felt that detachment, that there
Mm.
was no longer a connection between him and God. He did not address him. Look, Jesus addressed God as my father all along. But during this time where he was separated, when that darkness also happened and covered the entire area, he said, Elohi, Elohi, lama
mm,
sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? He
mm,
addressed God now as my God instead of Father, Father, as he always did.
mm,
And then the next statements that he does make after that,
mm.
it is finished.
Yeah.
It is
Tetelestai.
complete. Tetelestai, which
Mm,
in Greek is a what do you call this? It's an accounting term, meaning
mm,
all the installments, all the balance, everything is paid. It's
mm,
an accounting term to mean everything has been paid in full. You
mm,
owe nothing. But what we don't realize, remember, in Greek, when you speak in Greek, one of the most important things are the verb tenses, right?
mm,
And one of the and they are the most important parts of communicating in Greek.
mm,
So when you have that word, the Greek in the Greek language, it is a perfect tense, which rarely Jesus spoke in perfect tense within the New Testament.
mm,
And that tense has got two parts to it, right? The
mm,
perfect tense is a combination of two Greek tenses, the present tense, right?
mm,
And the aorist tense. The aorist
mm,
tense is linear, meaning
mm,
something that happens and continues to happen in the future. So when he said it is finished, he meant that the work is completed now and continues to be completed, meaning you are
mm,
saved now and you continue to be saved. It was not
mm,
a once off event when he used that particular word,
mm,
tetelestai,
mm,
in the present perfect tense and the
mm,
aorist tense. It means it is done now and it will continue to be done going forward, meaning you
mm,
are saved now and you will continue being saved going forward.
mm,
And it is so powerful that we really don't fully understand that statement, what is said there. So the
mm,
combination of those two tenses in perfect tense as used in John 19:30, it's
mm,
very overwhelming and it's got powerful significance for a Christian,
mm,
because the first element of the perfect tense is it is finished, you
mm,
are saved, it is done now, and it continues to be done going forward.
mm. And there are
So
actions in between, by the way. There's the whole thing of I'm thirsty alongside that.
yes,
And so you'll
yes,
see him partaking in he's partaking with the body basically, is
yes,
as you may put
absolutely,
it. He's going
absolutely,
back to the high priest role
absolutely.
of partaking with the body and
Exactly,
say, "Mm, take it
exactly.
on leadership."
And there are those elements. It's just that you know, we can go all night if we then start even focusing on those elements where he says, "I thirst," and they give him the water, and 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 and
The
and I mean,
vinegar,
even
the
oh, I
there's
mean,
a
you
lot
look
we
at
could
even
say, but we are just trying to kind of bring it down. You remember the vinegar was it the vinegar which was meant to weaken the person so that they're subduable, right?
yeah, you become even more thirsty if you drink that vinegar and the bitterness into that is linked to it, you know. And 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 so when he speaks of it is finished and he has taken the judgment, he has fulfilled everything that God required. God required death to pay the sin of man. And that
Mm,
is why it speaks back to even the statement that we have been saying for years, that once you're saved, are you going to lose your salvation? It will mean that this work is complete.
mm,
Imagine if you have bought something, Ricky, and somebody comes and pays for it in cash, and he
mm,
pays and he says there is lifetime warranty on it. Are you
mm,
still going to say, can I still lose this thing? Can I still lose this thing? When we're telling you it has been paid in full, you owe nothing. That car
mm,
is yours, it's been paid in full,
mm.
including all the maintenance, it's been paid in full. But you keep saying,
Yeah.
but what if I do this? Am I going to lose it? What if I hit a pothole? Do I lose the car? Hey,
Mm,
what if I drive to Cape Town? Do I lose the car? Well, and people start having questions on things that are not related to to what has been done. If Christ says
leadership
it's done,
also
it's complete.
the point, the reason that's the reason why I brought in the drinking of the wine part there. Oh my God, guys, my lights are off. The battery is not charging. It's gonna switch us off.
Oh no.
The reason why I brought it is because it brings us into the unity of what took place there. And so that's why I brought it up there. Guys, let's just end it. Otherwise, the broadcast will keep going after thing. Leadership, we'll have to find a way to finish this stream. Maybe next week. but, but if I take it on for the next 2 minutes, this live stream will keep running thingy.
Okay.
Unfortunately. Thank you, leadership.
Blessings to everyone.
Thank you. Hey, Vazalon, this one will kick me. The lights, I forgot the laptop doesn't stay on for too long. So it's all good. We'll finish next week. Docker says profound. You can say that again, leadership. Thank you, guys. Let me end it before this stream runs forever if this laptop just keeps running. Thanks. Unfortunately, we have to end.